Today I want to talk to you about the connection between two things, women and the environment. Growing up, I quickly realized how women can often be marginalized in a male-dominated society. In elementary school, my teacher wrote on my report card that I was quote-unquote bossy. Why was this a problem? Studies have shown that bossy is a gendered term, and it's used most frequently to refer to girls or women in a negative way. But the male alternative for that, which is aggressive, assertive, or confident, is seen as a positive attribute. And throughout high school, when I participated in Model United Nations debates, I realized that possessing the same personality characteristics that worked in favor of the male delegates often led girls to be labeled as bossy or controlling. And I never really thought about my experience as a female in relation to the plight of the environment until an environmental studies class I took last fall, in which I learned that there are similar forces which have driven both the emergence of women's movements and environmental movements around the world. This similarity can be explained through a concept called ecofeminism. Ecofeminism was born out of the idea that the male structure domination of our society has influenced both the exploitation of women and the exploitation of nature. Going back to my story, the teacher who wrote that on my report card was actually a female teacher. And that just goes to show that these inequalities are so deeply ingrained in our society that sometimes we can even do this to ourselves. But I believe that we live in a time where women can support each other and men can be our allies. And together, we can fight back against this culture that perpetuates the idea that not everything or everyone is equal. This culture that oppresses women and tells us that we are somehow subordinate to our male counterparts. And this culture that exploits natural resources because somehow they exist solely for human benefit or profit. There are several examples of ecofeminist movements around the world, but two of my favorites are the Greenbelt movement in Kenya and the Chipko movement in India. Greenbelt movement leader Wangari Maathai saw that women were being marginalized by colonial-era land policies, which took away their rights to land ownership. And she also saw the government carry out activities that led to long-term deforestation and soil erosion in Kenya, forcing women in rural areas to plant crops in fields with no topsoil. The Chipko movement in India rose in response to government-sponsored logging companies clear-cutting huge areas of forest. And this effectively took away the primary resource of many rural communities. This deforestation degraded the land, reduced food production and security, and forced men to out-migrate to cities to work. In both situations, the burden of environmental degradation was placed disproportionately on women, who lacked the political power to influence the very decisions that were harming them. But women's unique relationship with the land in these situations was also their key to success. Women understood the importance of a healthy natural landscape because it affected their everyday lives. And when they saw the environment around them being degraded by outside forces, they decided to take a stand. To date, the Greenbelt movement has been responsible for the planting of over 51 million trees in Kenya and the education of tens of thousands of women. And the Chipko movement in India got their government to ban commercial logging and kind of got them to concede that women should have been part of the decision-making process when it came to forest conservation efforts. So hopefully now you can all see how women around the world have leveraged the fundamental similarities between the forces that oppress them and the forces that exploit natural resources to create successful movements. Now let's shift back focus to the United States. Think about what women's movements in the United States have fought for. The right to vote, the right to receive the same compensation as men, the right to no-fault divorces, the right to not be fired or denied promotions due to pregnancy. These are all historical movements, but I want to argue that right now, there's a social momentum, which has been heavily influenced by social media. Social media has revolutionized the way we communicate with each other. It allows us to talk to people that are around the world from us almost instantaneously. Think about the most current women's movement, the Me Too movement, which has allowed an unprecedented number of women the ability to exercise their rights and to speak out about sexual assault and to be heard. And social media was the access point for this movement to gain traction so quickly. And while I was watching this movement start to demand so much attention, I was thinking to myself, this is it, you know? I think that this might be the movement of a generation, the movement that mobilized women of every generation, the one that we will remember for our entire lives, the one that we will look back on with pride. It took a long time for women to find a channel to express their voices, to communicate our grievances in a way to make it stick, instead of it being swept under the rug. Everyone who said "Me Too" made sure that the world heard them, and they only had to use 2 words to do it. Have any of you ever heard the phrase, "The environment doesn't have a voice"? And environmental scientists and activists, they are the proxies. They've pushed past powerful voices of doubt to be representatives of this voice that we cannot hear. Their efforts have led to the creation of the National Park System. There was Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, which launched the modern environmental movement. There was the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency, as well as numerous legislations that have been put in place to protect endangered species, regulate against harmful toxins such as pesticides, and promote clean water and clean air. But with all that said, I think maybe we've been missing something. Maybe Mother Earth is desperately trying to reach out to us. Maybe Mother Earth is screaming and fighting back against us, against the rapid depletion of her natural resources. Overfishing, deforestation, ocean acidification, glaciers melting, seas rising, and species dying. Maybe Mother Earth is saying "Me Too." She is saying "Me Too" the only way she knows how, through hurricanes, droughts, fires, and mudslides. That happened here in Santa Barbara. The Thomas Fire, which became the largest fire in California's modern history. And then merely a month later, we saw its implications in the debris flows in Montecito. These are tangible examples of the consequences of our actions. And we can see scientific proof of this as well. We can see proof that as we continue to alter our climate, as the Earth warms, we will start experiencing more extreme, catastrophic weather events. Ocean currents will change. Desert climates will become drier and hotter. Wet climates will be subject to heavier precipitation and put at higher risk for heavy flooding. Wildfire seasons will become longer and more severe. And actually, I shouldn't have put any of that in the future tense, because that's already happening all around us. We haven't been able to see a lot of these changes because they've accumulated gradually over time. But this period of invisibility is over. Mother Earth is screaming "Me Too" through violent events with devastating impacts. From an ecofeminist perspective, we cannot have true equality for women without having respect and an equal relationship with the environment. And this isn't necessarily a new way of thinking. Native Americans and other indigenous populations have long known the importance of respecting the land and understanding our place in a system where we can live in harmony with nature instead of destroying it. It is up to us to hear Mother Earth's pleas and to catalyze the societal change that is necessary to protect our future. Because in reality, Mother Earth does not need us to survive. We need her. So I guess I'm left with one question. When will enough people finally hear Mother Earth screaming "Me Too"? Thank you.